Hey there, I'm Jackie Ferris. This week on the 302, we are enjoying a kaleidoscope of color as we enter the world of mosaics artist Celeste Kelly. There's a lot of fun, a lot of fantasy, and some beautiful glass. Get ready, the 302 is headed your way. Welcome to the studio of Celeste Kelly. We're going to take a deep dive into the world of mosaic arts, and it's really going to blow your mind. I'm joined now by Celeste Kelly. Celeste, thank you so much for letting us come into your space.
Oh, you're welcome. It's good to have you all here.
Well, tell us a little bit about your art. Is so vibrant and creative, and it's eye-popping. So talk to us a little bit about, how you got started in all of this.
Well, I got started, I was a fabric artist before I started doing mosaics, but when I was in college, I did ceramics, so it wasn't all new to me. But I was visiting a friend in Barcelona, and I saw Gaudi's work, Antonio Gaudi's work, and I was just awestruck. I was just so excited, and I go, oh my gosh, I have to do this. So when I got home, I kind of just, brought my kiln stuff back out, got some clay, and thought I'll just play around with it. And then the fabric art went to the side. But the fabric art really helped me because I was designing my own fabric, and I was doing silk screen and dyeing, and I love color. And so this was just another step of how could I get color and do it in three-dimensional work, which was different than fabric. So,
absolutely, you do all different kinds of pieces, but right now you're working on a smaller piece. So how do you construct this? I know you make a lot of your own materials, right?
Right. So I make on this piece, I make all the tiles, and how I do that is I have a kiln, like I was saying, and this is clay. And then what you do is you cut off a piece of the clay, you roll it out, and then you stamp it with different stamps, and this is it without being fired. And then with clay, you have to fire it the first time, which is a bisque firing, and then after that, you add all the, I have all my different colors for the glazes over there. And so here you can see some of the different colors, and then I have all these over here too. So I have, the navy, yellow, and bright green, and I love color. So what I was doing on this piece, it's like a kind of another three-dimensional piece, is putting them on, and what I do is use like a mortar cement. So I would, let me see on this if this is going to fit. Okay, so this doesn't quite fit. So what I would do, I have all these different tools that I use to cut. So it's kind of like a puzzle. And if it doesn't work, then you can trim it. So what I would do is mark it with a marker, which I have somewhere. And then I'm going to put it on the floor because it can get a little
ricochet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then that will fit here. And then what I would do is put this on.
And is that like a cement? Or?
Yes, they call it a cement mortar adhesive. And it's really good. All the thing about doing mosaics in the north is this piece you could put outside, and a lot of the other pieces you'll see of mine are for outside, so you have to be very careful on what you use because everything has to be able to withstand the freezing and the thawing.
I love the glass that you have that you weave in there. Now that is it like a custom glass that you?
No, this is the stained glass.
Okay.
So here's some here. and I have full sheets over there, but I have I have all of my bins filled with different colors, and these are all the colors I would use on a piece like this. And so again, how you use this for this one is, this is a glass cutter, and you have to make sure there's oil coming out, and you score it, but scoring it just means you hear that sound, and then when you cut it, you just put this right on top of where you scored it, and you press, and you get exactly the shape, you know, what you want, the size.
That's amazing.
So,
now, you do this on your own, or you mentioned you have someone that helps you?
well, I have a helper. Her name is Dory Meow, and she usually comes on Wednesdays for 2 to 3 hours, but she also helped with organizing my whole studio because she thought it was just way too messy and she couldn't find anything, and so it's really been a help to have her.
Absolutely. Well, every artist needs someone to take care of the details while you're busy creating. So
Yes.
do you typically do small things? Do you do a lot of things at one time, or are you singularly focused on projects?
Right. Well, the thing that I do is, it depends, excuse me, on, I look at it as a relationship. I mean, that's what I realized in doing this for so many years. So a big piece like this one is kind of a mid-sized relationship. So I have to have a commitment, and I, want to work on that. And then others, like if I'm feeling I'm not ready to do a long-term commitment, then I can do something small. And so what this does is give me ideas of how I want colors, how I can use zigzags, how I can use straight lines, and how these are what I make out of clay too, and how that would fit. So I kind of experiment on these small ones. And I think the other thing about these small ones is that what I'd like to do is, this is kind of a prototype, is to work bigger. And so this kind of gives me an idea, okay, then I'm going to have to make really bigger pieces of this, bigger circles, and how to hang it. So there's ways of hanging it too.
Sure.
So yeah, and then if I'm feeling like, oh, I don't want to do any kind of mosaics that day, then I have to do my clay. So I have that to work on.
So you have all kinds of inspiration. Now I want to move outside so we can take a look at some of your pieces, and we're going to do that when we come back.
I'm Carrie Otaño. I'm the Vice President of Engagement with Opera Delaware. My favorite thing about the 302 is that we got everything that you need here. Check out the 302.
Welcome back. We have come outside to enjoy Celeste's mosaic garden. Celeste, this is really gorgeous. It really is, I have to tell you.
Thank
So
you.
let's talk a little bit about, you make a lot of these pieces for the outdoors. You talk about the materials, but where do you get the inspiration, say for instance, for your gargoyles?
Well, I've always been fascinated by gargoyles, and every time I travel, I always look like even in the United States, like in New York City or Washington, D.C., they have all these gargoyles around, and not just on churches. It's just amazing. But then when I went to Barcelona and saw Gaudi's work, and he did this whole cathedral, and on the outside you can just go around and see all of these gargoyles, and a lot of them are animals, a lot of them are birds, and I just kept thinking to myself, well, what would a modern day gargoyle look like? And so I started playing around and just had a blast. So at first I was doing ones on just kind of like a square, and adding bottles and all sorts of things, because I love how the sun goes through the glass and bottles, and trying to figure out how to attach them so they wouldn't, so they would be stationary and wouldn't break off, and it could be outside. So that took a while to figure out. And then, like with this one here, I just liked the idea of an animal face and horns. So I started playing around with how to make horns out of ceramics and how to do half of it with mosaic and half of it with glaze and how that would work.
It really is amazing, and just the patterns and things, it really reminds me a lot of, you know, say a Tiffany creation, but with a really modern and chic, cool twist.
Yeah, and I just love color. And I was just reading about Eric Carle. I don't have children, but I would read some of the books to my nephews and stuff, and I just loved his use of color and how he did animals. And just recently I was reading more about his life, and he was in Germany. He was born in the United States, but went back with his parents to Germany when he was like 9 or 10. And he said that's what he really missed, was just color, like going through the. And I just thought, oh yes, color is so important. And also reading books about animals and how they can see color totally different than we do. And I just feel like there's never enough color. Like we can only, especially with glass and glazes, you have to really play around to get new colors that are interesting and bright.
Now, one of the colors that seems to be dominant, at least in the work now, is blue. Do you have an affinity for blue?
I do. I love aqua blue and I love cobalts, but I love greens and I love yellows. And it's how they work together. And so even when I'm doing a color, like if a color is about, you know, this big, I put some cobalt, but then some navy, and then some lighter blues. So I make it all kind of the same family, but different.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So as far as your gargoyles, I mean, this might be a random question, but do you ever name them, or do they get named?
Well, I don't. I even try not to put a sex on it, the fluid sex, because I really want the person who buys it to name it, but not everybody's always comfortable with that. And so then, you know, I'll just say, well, what do you think it would be called?
Absolutely.
But children love them. I mean, children come right up and just stare them right in the eye. It's just amazing. So to see that kind of wonder. And I think that's what I love so much about making art is that I never know how it's going to be completed. And so I can work on something for like weeks, but until I grout it and do all that, I have no idea how it's really going to look. Now with the gargoyles, when I add their eyes, that's when they come alive to me. And so...
And you make the faces yourself.
I make the faces, I make the eyes, a lot of them, and sometimes I use glass eyes and sometimes I use eyes that I make. But I think a lot of the ones I have today, I've made all the eyes.
Have you ever seen someone you know in one of the faces that you've made for a gargoyle?
Animals. Like, I seen, like, the one that I was working on in the other room, it's really a bird, and it was one of my birds. I had cockatiels, and when the bird died, I just made this kind of bird gargoyle. And also my cats, they come alive. Like, I think this one, even though it has a snout and everything, it's one of my cats. Like, I look into this eyes and I see one of my cats.
Well, you know, you do what you love, and yeah, so I mean, it's only natural to think that that would come out in your work. And we're going to talk more about Celeste mosaics when we return.
Hi, I'm Jim Blackwell, the curator of the Seaford Museum, and history comes to life on the 302.
Welcome back. Now, Celeste, I know we've been talking a lot about the gargoyles, but we have a lot of obelisks behind us, and you have done some that are about this size, but you've also done mosaic obelisks that are much taller, right?
Right. And the ones that are much taller are harder to bring to shows because I do a lot of outside shows at the Rehoboth Art League and also the Pennsylvania Guild for Artists. They have a bunch of shows during the summer. And so I do the outside ones because I like to show my work out in the sun like you're seeing, today. So the obelisk started because not everybody likes gargoyles. You have to have a certain flavor for them. And I really wanted to make something that would be beautiful for the garden and give it during the winter too, because I know a lot of people are gardeners, and when everything dies, they need a bolt of color, which you will see, because right now my garden isn't green. It's kind of dark, so it really stands out. So these are a little easier to carry. The other thing that I'm doing, just I would say in the past 3 or 4 months, I'm trying to do what the person that does my website, Kim Smith, she talked about instead of obelisks, to say bolts of color.
Okay.
Okay,
that's great.
I didn't make that one up. She did. It was great. But so now what I'm finding though is I want to do curves more, and I was trying to figure out, because just doing it all vertical. So how can I get curves? So
How do you do the curves?
Well, I'm experimenting with it, but what I do is use styrofoam, and then I have to wrap that around with fiberglass and then do cement over that. So I have to do lots of coats of cement for it to work. And I really like the results. So you'll see how that one looks too. And I'm wondering how high I can get them. Or how low,
Yeah, that's another question I had for you. For the larger pieces that are, say, 6-10 feet tall, especially in the winter months, how do you do that? Is that something that you have to have high ceilings to do, or do you do one side laying down? And how do you do it?
What I do is do it in pieces.
Okay.
So that it would stack on one, and then I can put the other combined to the other. And then that's how the top, I can
you just kind of grout it whenever it's all put together?
Yeah,
okay.
well, you have to grout the whole thing in pieces too, so that's helpful. But yeah, I wish I had a bigger studio. It would be fun to, so that's what I did out in New Hope. There was a customer there who wanted a 10-foot one,
yeah,
and the ball was huge.
Wow.
That I put on top, and I did all that in pieces. So
whenever you're crafting something like this, maybe something that you're going to take to a show or maybe a commission, do you put an intention in it? I know some artists, whenever they put something together, it's like a wish for the place that it's going to be, for the person who's going to enjoy it. What do you think about when you're putting these together?
Well, especially for the gargoyles, I just feel like I have a friend who's a poet, and she would write me she'd say, Celeste, give me some ideas. What is this gargoyle about? And I would say, well, her mother was a fish and the father was a bird, and they got together one night and had this whole thing. And so this is going to be helping with the environment. It's going to help the magic in your garden. Things, just fun things. And so I do that. And with the bolts of color, I think just the whole thing is very playful and whimsical. And when people look at it, that's what they get. So it brings that out in them.
Yeah, it brings out a sense of joy with the
yes.
color, when the
Yes.
light, it's really beautiful when the light hits it just the right way. And
Right.
you really see, the joy, the value in the color that it's wrapped in. So it's really beautiful.
Yeah, one of the women who bought one of my pieces, what she would do, she loves her yard, and so she would send me a picture. She's also a photographer, so she would send me a picture every time a bird would land. And I didn't even know the bolt, that has the curve at the top, and I'm like, how can the bird even stand on it? But she even had a hawk standing on it, and big old hawk, and I'm like, holy cow. So I have all these great pictures of my bolts with birds on them.
Wildlife. I was going to ask how wildlife, because sometimes they don't like mirrors, but I mean, I guess you don't have to be a human to recognize beauty. So,
so
if somebody sees this at home and they're thinking to themselves, oh, I want to check this out, I want to learn more, what shows do you go to? You know, do you have social media? How can we get in touch with you? How can we see your work?
Well, my website is celestekelly.com, and I will have my shows posted on there. But I'm definitely going to be at the Rehoboth Art League. The outside show, it's the first and second weekend in August. So definitely check that one out. And also the Pennsylvania Guild for Craftsmen. I'm going to be at the one, I think it's June 22nd.
Excellent. Well, Celeste, thank you so much for inviting us into your world and sharing a little bit of your art with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
We'll be right back. Are you enjoying the show? Well, be sure to follow us on Facebook. Now, here are some other things that are happening in our area. For more information on Celeste's work, you can visit celestekelly.com. That'll do it for this week's episode of The 302. Be sure to follow us on Facebook for extra content and behind-the-scenes details. We're going to leave you now with more of Celeste's beautiful work. Until next time, I'm Jackie Ferris. Tell them you saw it on The 302.